Welcome back, innovators, to episode number 9 of the Simplified Integration Podcast, Starting Integration. What would my patients think? Leonardo da Vinci once said that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, and I agree. You see, the problem with the way that most consulting groups approach medical integration is anything but simple. In fact, it's the exact opposite. It's expensive, it's complicated, and quite frankly, it's exhausting. Enough is enough. There are far too many amazing integrated clinics that are struggling. Well, I'm on a mission to change that. What I've come to find from over 5 years working with integrated practices is that simplicity really is the secret. The old saying of less is more is true. Through a streamlined approach, I was able to create multiple successful 7-figure integrated clinics, and now I'm going to show you how you can do the same. Join me as I share with you the secrets to successful medical integration and practice growth. Join me on a journey to greater sophistication through innovation. I'm Dr. Andrew Wells, and welcome to the Simplified Integration Podcast. Now, I wanted to make this episode because I remember when I first integrated, I had a lot of fear and worry about what my patients would think. It's funny, when I introduced the title of this podcast, I almost said, what would my parents think, instead of what would my patients think? And by nature, I am a people pleaser. That's just part of my, if you take the DISC profile, I've taken a couple personality profiles. I'm very, very much a people pleaser. I want to make people happy. I don't like to rock the boat too much with others. And so when we first made the transition into integration and we started doing regenerative medicine, I had a lot of fear and doubts about how my patients and really how my community would perceive that. And here's why. When we first started out in practice, I would describe myself as a very right-wing chiropractic fanatic, maybe a little bit too far to the right. And what I mean by that is that I came out of school super amped up about chiropractic, a lot of new graduates, and I was going to save the world and save everyone's life with chiropractic care. And I was really gung-ho about it. And that really, it really helped me, especially in the beginning of practice. But what I realized is that, I didn't have to be that far right. And I say that far right because the left to me was medicine. And I'm not trying to make this political or anything, but for me, medicine was bad. And I know there's a certain time and a place for medicine. If you get shot or stabbed or you're in an emergency, thank God for medicine. But I wouldn't say I was anti-medicine, but I was very opposed to Western medicine. And those were the two ideals I had. And it was very black and white. And there was not a whole lot of middle ground for me. And as I started to mature in practice and in my profession and taking care of patients, I realized, okay, medicine isn't all that bad. There's some bad stuff to medicine, just like there's bad stuff to chiropractic. But I started to soften a little bit on my hardline approach to chiropractic. And I'm like, okay, there are other things out there that could potentially benefit a patient. So for example, if you have an overweight patient, would it not benefit them to lose weight? Absolutely. If you have, a patient on 20 medications and they're diabetic, could they benefit from a nutrition plan or exercise? Of course. So I started to realize, especially in medicine, there are some really key technologies and advancements in medicine that really don't, that help the patient, but don't have a lot of side effects. And so as I started to realize that there were some potential benefits of medically integrating the office, my first hang up on that was, oh crap, what are my patients going to think? Because I had these super loyal patients who are used to me and my philosophy. I didn't hold anything back, and they knew me as a pretty straight chiropractic guy. And so we would, we had a pretty loyal following. I had a really high retention rate for wellness patients, and we did monthly workshops on everything from exercise, nutrition, to healthy living, to detoxifying your home and your body. So my following, my chiropractic group was used to that. And so when I started thinking about how am I going to introduce medical components to the practice, what are my patients going to think? And are they going to see me as a fraud? Are they going to see me as selling out? Are they going to see me as turning my back on all the things that I already taught them? And these are the things that kept me up at night. These are the things I stressed out about. And there was a day on our calendar that I was going to start talking to patients. And I dreaded this day because I'm like, oh shoot, I don't know how my patients are going to react. And so when we first launched this, I had a list of 6 patients that day I was going to talk to. And this was before we integrated. So this was before we were still doing just chiropractic, but I wanted to start informing our patients of the change in the office. And I didn't do that through an email. I didn't do it through flyers. I wanted to have a one-on-one conversation. And I remember my first patient, I said, hey, Mrs. Jones, I just want to let you know we're making some really exciting changes in the office. We've decided to medically integrate, so we'll be offering some new services in our office that we didn't have access to before, and we think that we can use these services to help our patients get better faster. And I remember the patient saying like, "Oh, what kind of stuff are you doing?" And I explained to her what integration was, and she's like, "Wow, this is fantastic. This is going to really help your patients and practice. It's really exciting." And each patient I described this to, they all had really positive feedback. And I remember one couple, these are like one of my diehard couple patients. And they're like, I remember I told them this, and they came back the next day, the next week, and they're like, "Hey, can we talk to you?" And they brought me into the exam room, like, "What's going on with this change? Like, why are you doing all these things different? Like, is something wrong? Has something happened?" And they were all concerned about me and the practice. And it was coming out of a place of love. And they really just wanted to know, like, bottom line, like, what was this all about? And so that was the only, if you can call it a negative feedback I got from my patients. And so I had all this doubt and all this worry. And it was all in my head. And the reality was, even though I had these gung-ho patients, they were actually really excited about what they saw as forward progression for the practice. And they saw this being things that could not only help our patients and me, but also our practice and themselves. And I remember specifically one thing that they were really excited about was regenerative medicine when we first introduced that into our practice. I remember, so we were used to doing workshops and lectures. We did monthly workshops in our office. So we'd invite our patients, and we usually get 15, 20, 25, maybe 30 patients if it was a really exciting topic. And I remember when we did regenerative medicine, this was like double the amount of attendance and signups of any other workshop we'd ever done. I think we had like 55 or 60 people register for this event. And so we were holding this in our office, and we can only hold like 30 people max in our office. So we had we split the seminar up into two groups, and we had like two groups of 30 people, and the office was like jam-packed. So our patients came, and they also were bringing like their neighbors, their coworkers, people from church, all these people they thought could benefit from regenerative medicine, and it was a huge success. When we first launched it, I mean, we had tons of patients that signed up for regenerative medicine, so it was a really cool way to launch that certain therapy in our office. And but I talk about this because a lot of doctors, when you talk about integration, that is a fear, and it's a fear that's not talked about very often. And sometimes it's a fear that chiropractors don't want to admit to, because deep down, sometimes when we make changes, it's like, oh my gosh, patients are going to think I'm just doing this just for financial purposes or just for my own benefit. When the reality is you're doing it for a couple of reasons. You're doing it, yes, for the financial benefit of you and your practice, but also it should be, if it's coming from a place of love and care for your patients, it should be coming from a place of serving your patients. Do these therapies make sense to you? Does it make sense to your patients to offer these types of services? And for me, it was kind of a no-brainer, but I always had that hang up. And I remember particularly one client I used to work with, when he first integrated, he was terrified of telling his patients about this for the same reasons I had those fears. And we had talked about it before. This is like a super smart, really nice doctor. And he didn't have these conversations with his patients until the day he actually integrated. So no one knew what to expect. So when his patients were walking in, they're like, "What the heck? Like, what's going on? Is this the same office?" And this poor doc was hiding in the back, like in his closet, like in the janitor's closet, because he was afraid of going out and talking to his patients. And he didn't do a good job of managing those expectations, because he was afraid of, like, for the same reasons I was afraid of, like, what the patients were going to think. And I can tell you that the patient's concerns are a lot different than your concerns, right? All they want to do is they want to make sure they're getting out of pain, they're getting healthy. That's why they came to your office. They don't care about all the other stuff that happens. They just want to know that they're being taken care of. And so when you here's the cool thing about regenerative medicine is you're positioning yourself as a very cutting edge, forward thinking chiropractor. And I'm not saying that if you don't do regenerative medicine that you're like outdated or old school. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you're doing things like regenerative medicine, patients are like, wow, like my chiropractor does regenerative medicine. Like it's, for what it's worth, at least at the surface level, it sounds advanced. And it is. It's a great service. We have fantastic results. But from a patient's perspective, it's a fantastic marketing tool, and it positions you differently than other chiropractors in your community. Even if you're not like a super gung-ho regenerative medicine clinic and you're just like knocking it out of the park, if you even offer that service, that's pretty impressive as well. So I just want to talk about this because it is a real fear. It's a real thing. It's a real hang up that chiropractors have. You know, all the fear of doubt. How will they be perceived? Are you going to feel like you're selling out and you're selling out to medicine or selling out chiropractic. So I just want to talk to you about my experience and some other doctors' experiences and going through this. But I can tell you, if you have that fear, it's all in your head. So I hope this helps you. I hope this makes sense. Thanks for joining today, Doc. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Hey, innovators. Thanks for listening to the Simplified Integration Podcast. The fact that you're listening tells me that you're like me, someone who loves simplicity. And the truth is, those who embrace simplicity are some of the greatest innovators. So I hope you got a ton of value from what we covered on today's episode. Be sure to subscribe and share with other docs that you feel could benefit from greater sophistication through simplification and innovation. If you've got specific questions that you'd like answered on this podcast, or you've got specific topics that you'd like me to discuss, just shoot me an email at info@integrationsecrets.com. That's info@integrationsecrets.com.